to welcome you, Minister, here. I want to commend Senators Byrne and Cassells and their colleagues for proposing this bill and indeed for highlighting the issue of Seanad reform so early in the term of this new Seanad. That's very welcome. Reform is clearly long overdue, as you've said yourselves, Senators. I think many of us who've been in this House for some time will feel a strong sense of déjà vu because, of course, we have debated Seanad reform over quite a number of occasions and unfortunately there has been a real dragging of heels on it by successive governments and over many decades, as you've said. It is disappointing that this programme for government, I think, doesn't specifically mention Seanad reform, although the Electoral Commission proposal is very welcome, and I do very much welcome that, and it's Labour Party policy too. And indeed, the Green Party was one of the, I think the only one of the 3 coalition partner parties to mention Seanad reform and to commit to implementing the Manning report. So certainly the Manning report is a very important part of it gives us an important blueprint for reform. I should say that in 2015, the Labour group, of which I was then leader, made a submission to the Manning process, and it's a submission that I would urge colleagues to read because it made some very practical suggestions and recommendations for reform that would not require constitutional amendment and yet would introduce universal suffrage. And that really is clearly the gold standard. It would also, of course, have implemented the 7th Amendment and have extended the franchise on the university panels to graduates of all the institutions. And I do absolutely support that, as indeed do Labour. But I think the difficulty for me is that to me is a reform that needs to be done as part of a package of reforms, because otherwise we're going to see such a skewing of the electorate that you would have 6 senators elected by 800,000 people, I think, university graduates, and yet you'd have still 4, if you just have this bill without the other so needed reforms, you would not have any reform to the electoral process for the 43 senators. Clearly the 11 are contained in the Constitution, and that can't be changed. Our proposal in 2015 was that you would have universal suffrage and that those who are university graduates, or indeed graduates of any third level institution, would have an option of voting for the university panel instead of one of the other panels. So you wouldn't be doubly enfranchised as a university graduate, but you would have universal suffrage, and you would have extended the franchise to all third level graduates for one panel. And again, as I say, I think it's a simple and a straightforward way of dealing with the necessary Seanad reform. Clearly, there are other big issues around the bill in terms of logistical challenges, in terms of operational challenges, and in terms of the cost of running an election where you have 800,000 electors potentially. But those shouldn't stand in the way, clearly, of reform, and I do very much support the momentum towards reform. And I really hope that we'll see the great work that was done in the Manning reform process and with Senator McDougall's group, the Seanad Reform Implementation Group, which I was proud to represent Labour on. I hope we'll be able to build on that in the lifetime of this government and this Seanad, and we will actually be able to bring forward the package of reforms that's so badly needed, that can be done within the Constitution and that can bring about universal suffrage, including also the expansion of the university panel to include graduates of all third level institutions. Thank
you, Senator.